From cheese grater slides to trash-filled playgrounds where kids play risky crafts, here are 10 dangerous amusement parks. There are a few theme parks more dangerous than Action Park. This water park, located in New Jersey, USA, was opened in 1978 and had to close permanently in 1996 because of the numerous accidents that had occurred there. It was the businessman Eugene Melville who had the idea to build it. He owned ski areas that only welcomed people in winter. He wanted to build a playground that would be open to the public the rest of the year. Little by little, Action Park expanded and was embellished with about 60 rides. Eugene Melville built very high and steep slides, large wave pools, and other ambitious attractions. From the moment the water park opened, it was a huge success. Millions of people came every year. However, there were many accidents of various cases. Some rides were poorly designed. There were sleds with falls and even electrocutions. These misfortunes, which made little noise, did not stop visitors from flocking. Eugene Melville was getting rich, both from success of his dangerous rides and from the insurance fraud he was perpetrating. But it couldn't continue like this. Hundreds of people were injured every week in nearby hospitals. Lawsuits were piling up, and his scams were being exposed. Inexperienced staff, unworthy security, and failing attractions were causing too much damage. The state decided to close the water park forever. Now we're going to talk about a less conventional and less known kind of leisure space. These are playgrounds for children, but without rides and attractions. Instead, there were all kinds of objects, tools, and materials piled up like in a dump. The idea for such a play area came from American psychologists. According to them, children sometimes need to have fun by creating their own games, according to their own fantasies, without being restricted by rules. This idea, as we will see, has advantages and disadvantages. This is why these playgrounds are more like dumping grounds. These spaces were filled with a pile of old, dirty, or dangerous objects: saws, hammers, tires, broken furniture, dismembered mannequins, pieces of scrap metal, garbage of all kinds, etc. The children were not unhappy to play there, along among themselves and far from their parents. They dug holes in the mud, climbed on rusty platforms, broke or repaired objects according to their whims. However, as you may have guessed, these amusements were not without danger. These children were barely supervised by the educators. They wielded sharp, dirty tools which they could use against each other when bickering. Let's not even talk about the diseases that were bound to threaten them in such a dirty environment. In short, this is why the innovative idea of adventure playgrounds did not succeed. One day in Spain, the mayor of Estepana, a seaside town in the province of Malaga, had a funny idea that he wanted to implement. He wanted to build a slide that would connect two streets in the city 10 minutes apart. This downhill track would be a precious time saver for the inhabitants, children and adults alike. In addition, it would be the longest urban slide in the country, so it was built. And at first glance, the completed slide was not very reassuring, as it included several steep slopes. However, the mayor of Estepana was proud of his extravagant and useless work. His satisfaction lasted a day, because the slide was closed less than 24 hours later. Many people were injured while taking the shortcut. Some didn't make it all the way down and flew through the air halfway down. People got bruised elbows, faces, legs, and ribs. The inhabitants were indignant about this harmful invention. The Estepana slide lasted less than a day. The inhabitants continued to walk from one street to another, preferring to lose time rather than the use of a limb. This is another example of a free play area for children. The main difference is that this place, located in Tver, Russia, is more sordid and dangerous. It is hard to imagine that a child living in Moscow, for example, would want to go there to have fun. But let's suppose that he wants to, by one of those incomprehensible whims that children sometimes have. First of all, the mother and child will not have to travel far from the capital, because this park is located a little further north of Moscow. Once there, the mother will surely be repulsed by the appearance of the sad playground. There are no attractions here because nothing is attractive. The swing, the turnstile, and various other strange games are crudely constructed with rusty scrap metal. It seems that this playground is a grotesque parody, a kind of exhibition made on purpose to shock. The child can have fun for a few moments, but he will soon get bored of it because there's not much to play with. If he stays there too long, he runs the risk of injuring himself in one of these machines that look like medieval torture devices. In this park, everything is creaky, dusty, deranged, horrible, and a child is more likely to get tetanus and break bones than to have fun there. In 2018, the Playland amusement park, located in New York City, was in the news a lot. Visitors who were there often got sick in the following days, which alerted inspection officials. They wanted to know the cause of these illnesses, which were occurring in a relatively large number of guests. They went to the park, examined, investigated, and wrote their reports, which made a lot of noise. It should be noted at the outset that the Playland Park, built in 1928, had been the scene of a half a dozen accidents, some of which were due to mechanical failure or professional error. But the investigation we're talking about is about something else. The inspector's report stated that food management was catastrophic. Food was stored in rat-infested areas, against which no measures were taken. The managers left it to the cats to chase the rodents away. Bird droppings littered the barbecues. There were not enough sinks to wash your hands. The food boxes were filthy and rats would crawl in. No one ever cleaned anything. And under these conditions, visitors were served a lot of food, and they certainly got intoxicated. But as a result of this scandal, the park was turned over to another company. The Verrückt water slide no longer exists today. It was located in Kansas, USA, and was considered the largest and most dangerous water slide in the world. Opened in 2014, it was closed and dismantled 2 years later. The Estepana group built the slide, which is over 50 meters high. The Texas company already managed several amusement parks, but the Verrückt project ran into a few difficulties. Before it was even completed, it was noticed that the angles of inclination did not meet the recommended thresholds. The curvature of the slide area was corrected several times. Despite this, the slide was still dangerous. After completion, a safety expert judged the construction work to be poorly done and recommended that no one under the age of 16 should be allowed on the slide. However, the Estepana group ignored this advice and the slide was open to all. In order to prevent the boys from being thrown out, they had the unfortunate idea of stretching a net along the entire course. This relatively rigid net, which prevented flying in the air, was sharp when hit at high speed. Unfortunately, all these irresponsible decisions cost the life of a 10-year-old child in 2016. The case shocked the city, and it was decided that the slide would be closed and taken down. There is an amusement park in Queensland, Australia, known as Dreamworld, which can be counted among the parks of questionable safety. Opened about 40 years ago, this park is operated by Ardent Leisure, which has been in a lot of legal trouble in recent years. If you're interested in experiencing this park, you need to know a few facts. Dreamworld Park is dangerous in that the security checks are poorly done. In fact, after a raft collision in a water ride in 2016, and which claimed the lives of 4 people, a court officer had stated that the risks of accidents had been poorly assessed for at least 30 years. The court had determined that the maintenance of the machines had been neglected and that those in charge had failed in their main duty, the safety of visitors. The faults were so serious that the owner was fined over 4.5 million Australian dollars. This short-sightedness made this theme park very popular in the country, very dangerous without being suspected. The overseas Chinese town is a large leisure and vacation area located in Shenzhen, China. This vast complex covers an area of 900 hectares. Among the attractions that you can find there is one in particular, a ride that has the shape of a dome. It is a space shuttle simulator which reproduces the sensations of NASA astronaut training. This type of ride is mostly found in the United States, and the Chinese have built one in their own way. When you enter it, after a few moments of waiting, you will have the brutal sensation of a rocket taking off. And if you resist the nausea, you still have to endure the violent shocks of the shuttle and hope that there is no malfunction, because these artificial turbulences can shake the device. In 2010, for example, the hemispheric shuttle collapsed, killing and injuring several people. For such thrills, there is too much danger. Better avoid this Chinese space simulator. In 2018 was built in Pakistan the Kashmir Park. Its opening had coincided with the celebration that follows the end of Ramadan. The event was a great celebration. The population came in large numbers, and in the following weeks the crowd hardly decreased. What all these people did not know was that this Pakistani park did not meet the international standards of the theme park industry. The design, construction, and maintenance did not strictly comply with safety regulations. These shortcomings made the park unsafe, and visitors were unaware of this. Fortunately, for several weeks, there were no accidents, despite reports of problems that could cause alarm. But such poor management was bound to lead to the inevitable. A poorly bolted carousel collapsed, killing about 30 people. The accident caused a stir in the country, and strong measures were adopted. The park was closed for a whole year, and a more competent management took over. Many adjustments were made. After all this, the park was brought up to international standards. It is a pity that the danger of amusement parks is generally due to the carelessness of the managers, for whom profit is more important than safety. Carsten Heller, a German artist living in Sweden, has created perhaps the most original slide ever made. This creator is part of the relational aesthetics movement. He produces all kinds of phantasmagorical works, which are difficult to classify. For example, panoramic towers with a contorted appearance, rooms lined with mirrors that confuse the visitor. Carsten has a predilection for slides. For him, these are creations that provide an incomparable emotional experience. But his taste for the paradoxical and the bizarre has led him to create a kind of slide that everyone would rather stay away from. It's a slide shaped like a cheese grater. Its design, except for the size, mimics exactly the metal utensil. If someone were foolish enough to slide down it, they would certainly catch shreds of flesh on it. Fortunately, the only purpose of the slide is to amuse and shock the viewer. This is the end of our video, where you could discover 10 dangerous amusement parks. As usual, feel free to share your impressions with us in the comment sections. Tell us if, despite all the risk we've talked about, you still want to try one of these attractions.